Imagine you're walking through the marble streets of ancient Rome in 67 AD and witness something that freezes your blood. And there, in the heart of the Roman Forum, walks the most powerful man on earth, Emperor Nero. At his side, a woman. She glides beside him in jewels and powder, her face calm, blank, beautiful. But behind the mascara and gold was a teenage boy named Sporus. And what did Nero do to him? It wasn't love. It wasn't madness. It was a slow, surgical destruction of identity. A grotesque performance of grief, obsession, and power so perverse that even ancient historians couldn't agree on how to describe it without flinching. This isn't just another scandal from Rome's bloody past. This is psychological horror in a purple robe. Before we step deeper into the shadow of this empire, if you're the kind of person who likes their history raw, disturbing, and unsanitized, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? It blows my mind that thousands of years later, we're still trying to piece together these human tragedies, from different continents, different lives, all united by one grim fascination. What happens when power becomes a sickness? You're about to hear a story of obsession so deep, it turned a boy into a living replica of a dead woman. Because when Nero lost the one person he claimed to love, he didn't just grieve. He recreated her, piece by piece, flesh and mind. You've probably never heard the name Sporus, but after this, you won't forget it. First, let's meet the monster who made this nightmare possible. Nero Claudius Caesar. When he took power at just 16, the Roman people had hope. He cut taxes, threw lavish games, sang on stage like some twisted mix of Caesar and Broadway showman. But power, absolute, untouchable, unchecked power, rots the brain. And by 65 AD, Nero wasn't a prince of peace. He was a paranoid god-king trapped in a golden coffin of his own madness. Rome had 60 million citizens, and only one man who could never be told no. Think about that. No advisors are brave enough to speak the truth. No wife is safe enough to argue. No citizen powerful enough to defy. And then came Poppaea Sabina, the most dangerous woman in Nero's life. Not because she was evil, but because she was everything he wanted and couldn't control. Poppaea wasn't just beautiful. She was weaponized beauty. She had political instincts sharper than any senator's blade. And Nero? He was already stuck in a cold marriage with Octavia, daughter of the last emperor. Boring, reserved, a puppet wife. Poppaea was fire, movement, seduction incarnate. And Nero fell hard. What started as a predictable Roman affair, emperor cheats on wife, spiraled into a deadly obsession. Nero didn't just want Poppaea. He wanted to own her, like a jewel no one else could touch. If a man stared too long at her during a banquet, Nero would fantasize about murder. He stationed guards around her, not for her safety, but to track her every breath. He showered her in gifts that could bankrupt entire provinces. Silks from China, perfumes from Arabia, gold that could blind you. And still, it wasn't enough. So he did what only a Roman emperor could do. He rewrote reality. Octavia, gone, divorced, banished, eventually executed. Poppaea, crowned, worshipped. A wedding fit for the gods, but one forged entirely in delusion. But marriage didn't calm him. It amplified the sickness. Poppaea became a porcelain doll inside Nero's empire of mirrors. He surrounded her with spies disguised as friends, commissioned statues and paintings of her face so her image could stalk him in every room. And when she walked the halls of their palace, Nero would follow, silently, obsessively, watching her breathe, brush her hair, blink. This wasn't love, it was taxidermy of the soul. Poppaea, for all her intelligence, was trapped, and she knew it. So she played the game carefully, used her position to advance her allies, planted roots of power just in case Nero's obsession turned sour. But she made one fatal mistake. She talked back. 65 AD, Poppaea was pregnant, exhausted, and Nero was spiraling. The fight started like any other, maybe about chariot races, maybe about his embarrassing theater performances. Depends on which historian you ask. But Poppaea made the mistake of calling him out. She accused him of caring more about applause than the empire. He snapped. Some say he kicked her in the stomach. Others say he beat her until the palace walls ran red. What do we know? She collapsed. Internal bleeding. No pulse. Unborn child is gone. Imagine the silence in that room. A god among men, covered in blood. Nero panicked, cried, begged her body to breathe, as if power could resurrect the dead. He summoned Rome's best physicians, threw mountains of gold at them, and threatened to flay them if they failed. But it was already over. Poppaea, the woman he killed with his own hands, was gone. And in that moment, Nero broke, not into grief, but into madness. And what he did next is where Sporus enters this nightmare. Nero didn't cremate Poppaea, as Roman tradition demanded. No, that would have meant letting her go. Instead, he had her embalmed like an Egyptian queen and sealed inside a tomb more elaborate than any emperor's before her. Marble, gold, perfumed linens. She wasn't just dead, she was canonized. He declared her divine, created a state-sponsored cult in her honor. And then he did something worse than disturbing. He kept talking to her. Days would pass with the emperor speaking to Poppaea's corpse as if she were still alive, giving orders, whispering secrets, laughing softly to someone who could no longer laugh back. And the court? They played along. They left her favorite seat empty at banquets, referred to her in the present tense. Anyone who dared suggest the emperor should move on was swiftly exiled or quietly erased. This is when Sporus entered the nightmare. He was maybe 14, maybe 15, a palace-born slave, freed as a child, but raised in service to the most powerful family in Rome. Trained for bureaucracy, fluent in flattery, one of those young men who knew how to survive behind palace walls. On paper, he had a decent life. In reality, he was utterly dependent on Nero's mercy, a plaything in waiting. And what caught Nero's attention wasn't Sporus's intelligence. It was his face. Sporus had the kind of beauty Romans found uncanny: delicate features, fine bone structure, soft almond eyes. And in Nero's broken mind, he saw her. Multiple ancient sources say it plainly. Sporus looked like Poppaea, so much so that when Nero first laid eyes on him after the empress's death, he stopped breathing. He didn't see a boy. He saw a resurrection, a chance to undo the one mistake even an emperor couldn't fix. Now, of course, there was one problem. Sporus was male. But this is Nero we're talking about. A man who believed himself divine, who thought nothing of talking to corpses, who demanded reality bend to his will. Gender? That was just another illusion he could control. So he ordered something that even Rome, in all its brutality, hadn't seen before. He didn't just dress Sporus like a woman. He decided to turn him into one. What came next was a calculated act of identity annihilation. Nero summoned physicians, not healers, but cutters, and he ordered them to surgically alter Sporus's body to make him more feminine. This wasn't surgery, it was mutilation, done not out of necessity, but for the emperor's entertainment. The procedure was performed in secret rooms inside the imperial palace, with crude tools, no anesthesia, and the ever-present risk of death. Sporus would have been held down by guards, stripped, cut, screaming, and no one would have stopped it, because Nero wanted a doll, and a doll cannot say no. If he survived, Sporus would never be the same. He would never father children, never reclaim his body, never be seen as fully male or fully anything again. His identity was surgically erased, and when he awoke, shaking, stitched, broken, Nero made an announcement that stunned even jaded Roman elites. He was going to marry Sporus. Yes, you heard that right. Rome's most powerful man was planning a full imperial wedding, not to a noblewoman, not even to a courtesan, but to a castrated teenage boy he had refashioned into his dead wife. Sporus was renamed Sabina after Poppaea. He was relocated to special quarters. His old identity was scrubbed from palace records, and the transformation, the second one, the social one, began. Dressmakers created gowns to mask his wounds and highlight his feminine traits. Jewelers reworked the empress's old accessories to fit his new form. Makeup artists taught him how to soften his face with rouge and kohl, not for vanity, but for compliance. Every day, Sporus was rebuilt. His jewelry, recycled from Poppæa's corpse, his wardrobe, a restitched ghost of another woman's life. He was costumed in a memory, paraded like a puppet, reshaped until he disappeared inside someone else's skin. Hairdressers curled and pinned his hair into the elaborate high-status styles of Roman elite women, a daily ritual that took hours and often required heated metal tools, burned scalps, and a room full of silent servants. But the worst part wasn't physical. It was behavioral reprogramming. He was assigned tutors to teach him how to walk like a lady, how to sit modestly, how to hold his hands and flutter his fingers, as if grace could be manufactured through pain. He was drilled in posture, poise, and even vocal feminization. Voice coaches forced him to speak in a higher register, to adopt daintier linguistic patterns. Imagine it, your voice stolen, your body remade, your name replaced, your memories suppressed. And every time he looked into a mirror, what looked back wasn't Sporus. It was her, Poppaea, dead, but never gone. By spring of 67 AD, the ceremony was ready. Nero scheduled the wedding to coincide with major religious festivals, to give it ceremonial weight, as if marrying your dead wife's stand-in wasn't already twisted enough. The palace glowed with thousands of oil lamps. Flowers were shipped in from across the empire. Musicians played sacred hymns. Wine flowed like blood. To the unknowing guest, it looked like an ordinary imperial wedding. But the ones who knew, they were watching a horror show. A boy, mutilated, redressed, renamed, standing at the altar in a woman's gown, wearing a crown meant for the woman his husband murdered, and the empire applauded. Because when you live in Rome, under Nero, you don't question madness. You dress it in silk, you light a candle, you toast to love, and you pray that you're not next. The wedding ceremony ticked every box of Roman tradition. Vows exchanged, hands joined, sacred bread broken, legal contracts signed. To the guests, it was an imperial spectacle. They smiled, they applauded, they showered Sporus with extravagant gifts. But behind those practiced smiles, a thick, choking fog of horror. Everyone knew they were witnessing something fundamentally wrong. After the ceremony, Nero didn't treat Sporus like a victim. He treated him like an empress. Sporus was granted his own household, servants bowing at his feet, private quarters carved from palace marble, and a fat income funneled from Rome's coffers. He traveled in a litter like royalty, rode horses with a retinue that whispered his name in awe or fear. But luxury was a cage, one forged from the complete erasure of Sporus's true self. He was trapped in an endless, soul-crushing role. Public functions became a nightmare stage. Sporus sat beside Nero at state dinners, the perfect wife smiling on command, every gesture scripted. And Nero, He didn't just pretend Sporus was Poppaea resurrected. He believed it. He called him by Poppaea's name, told stories they never shared, expected Sporus to react with memories he never had. One wrong word, one missed glance, death. The strain? Unimaginable. Every morning Sporus woke in rooms decorated with portraits of a woman he'd never met. Mirrors showed a stranger wearing his face. Every conversation demanded he step deeper into a fantasy not his own. And this went on for over 2 years. Then Nero decided to take the show on the road to Greece. He fancied himself an artist, eager to compete in festivals where applause wasn't bought but earned. Sporus came along, paraded as Rome's empress, a teenage boy dressed as a woman, standing as living proof of imperial madness. Can you imagine the faces of Greek aristocrats? Confusion, horror, silent disbelief. But by 68 AD, Nero's madness had finally broken the empire. Governors revolted. The Praetorian Guard declared him public enemy number 1. The Senate condemned him. And Nero? He fled Rome, dragging Sporus, his living ghost of Poppaea, with him. They hid in a villa outside Rome. Nero oscillated between escape plans and dramatic suicide rehearsals. When the enemy closed in, he chose death. But Sporus, left behind, vulnerable. What happened next? The nightmare didn't end. Sporus became political property, traded like chattel among Rome's new rulers. Nidius Sabinus, then Otho, then Vitellius. Each man kept him dressed in Poppaea's finery, calling him by her name, a grotesque token of imperial decadence. Under Vitellius, Sporus's torment reached its nadir. He was forced to perform in the Colosseum, humiliated, sexually degraded, displayed before thousands for sport. Faced with this ultimate cruelty, Sporus made the only choice left to him: death, likely poison, around 20 years old. In death, Sporus escaped the grotesque theater that had devoured his life. Yet, history remembers him less as a person and more as a symbol of imperial decay. The true horror? How completely he was stripped of identity and agency. From the moment Nero saw a reflection of Poppaea in his face, Sporus ceased to exist as himself. He became a canvas for a madman's darkest fantasies. But his suicide was also a spark of rebellion, a final act of defiance, a refusal to endure one more day of degradation. And yet, we know almost nothing about the real Sporus. His dreams, hopes, desires, wiped clean like chalk from a blackboard. All replaced by a performance so perfect, so cruel, it erased the boy who once was. Remember Sporus not just as a curiosity of ancient Rome, but as a brutal reminder of what happens when absolute power meets unchecked cruelty, and as proof that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is choose their own fate. Because behind every empire's glittering facade are stories of suffering and survival. Stories like Sporus's, stories that still demand our compassion.